For thousands of years, the desert offered one form of mercy: night. The sun disappeared. The ground released its heat. The body recovered. But Dubai has changed the rules. Here the sun can set, and the city can remain trapped inside the day. The roads keep the heat. The walls release it slowly. Humidity holds it against the skin, and millions of machines keep moving it from one place to another. Then morning arrives, before Dubai has finished cooling from yesterday. So what happens when a desert city loses the night? It loses its only place to recover. Dubai is not running out of night. It is running out of recovery. And the first sign of collapse is not a blackout. It is a city that never becomes cool enough to begin again. Dubai does not enter the night empty. It carries the entire day with it. Every road becomes a battery. Every wall stores sunlight. Every tower delays the escape of heat. The sun leaves, but the energy it deposited stays behind. To understand how a city begins to break down, you must first look at what happens when the sky goes dark. Visitors stepping out of the airport at midnight expect the desert air to offer a crisp relief. Instead, they walk into a heavy, invisible wall. Researchers measuring Dubai found that its urban heat island becomes especially powerful after dark. Across the study period, the average nighttime difference reached roughly 3.3 degrees Celsius above the rural reference. 3 degrees sounds harmless on a screen. But the body does not experience a screen. It experiences another hour without relief. It experiences a walking path in the marina that feels like an oven long after dinner service has ended. This is the first crack in the tourism illusion. A luxury destination relies on the freedom to move. But when the heat island pushes the daytime temperatures deep into the evening, that freedom evaporates. Tourists are forced to retreat. Outdoor dining terraces sit empty. The carefully engineered promenades become transit zones rather than destinations. If night is supposed to release the heat, why does the city become more different from its surroundings after sunset? Because Dubai is no longer merely sitting inside a hot climate. It is storing the climate inside the city. During the day, Dubai absorbs the desert. At night, it slowly gives the desert back. But the city has added its own heat to the transaction. Cars, lights, pumps, elevators, compressors, cooling plants. The skyline does not sleep. It glows, moves, and exhales. The architecture that makes Dubai famous is exactly what makes its nights unsustainable. The concrete road spends the day charging. Between the endless rows of glass towers, the sky becomes smaller, trapping the radiation from escaping upward. At night, the city begins returning everything it absorbed. Satellite observations found the exact same pattern from above, a measurable nighttime surface heat island spread across the engineered landscape. And over the study period, its magnitude moved upward, averaging roughly 2.66 degrees Celsius across the dataset. Urbanization is systematically replacing the natural desert terrain with artificial surfaces that have a radically different way of absorbing and releasing energy. To me, this is where the skyline stops looking futuristic. It begins to look like the illuminated casing of a machine that cannot shut down. Every new luxury hotel development, every new retail district, every new residential mega project is just another layer of thermal mass added to the grid. The tourism industry sells the image of a vibrant evening culture, but the physical reality of the city is actively destroying that possibility. The heat gets trapped in the narrow canyons of downtown. It radiates from the asphalt of the massive parking structures. It bleeds from the sheer glass facades, and outside the cooled walls of that machine, there is one component that cannot be replaced: the human body. A hot day is an assault. A hot night removes the recovery period. The heart does not receive the same pause. Sleep becomes shorter. Fatigue survives until morning. Then the next day begins with yesterday's heat still inside the body. The tourism sector does not run on automatic doors alone. It requires thousands of workers, baggage handlers, drivers, delivery riders, maintenance crews, cleaners, security guards. These are the people who absorb the environment so that the tourist does not have to. When the night refuses to cool, the biological toll accumulates. A systematic global review found that higher temperatures are directly associated with diminished sleep quality and shorter sleep duration. Another study documented that nights over 30 degrees Celsius strip away roughly 14 minutes of sleep on average compared to the coolest nights. A hot day is a challenge. A hot night is a biological debt. The danger becomes independent. Research published in The Lancet Planetary Health concluded that nighttime heat can play a significant independent role in the heat-related mortality burden. How many hot days can a person absorb when each night returns only part of what the day took away? Less sleep, less recovery, more fatigue, another commute, another delivery, another roof, another wall of heat. The service quality of a hospitality empire depends entirely on a workforce that is slowly being exhausted by the very environment they are forced to maintain. Even the tourists feel the pressure. A family arrives paying thousands of dollars for a premium experience, only to find that stepping onto their balcony at midnight induces immediate sweating. They sleep poorly because the residual heat penetrates the building envelope, forcing the climate control to work aggressively and noisily just feet from their bed. The body never gets its second chance. But Dubai has an answer for the exhausted body. Do not cool the night. Build a smaller night indoors. Dubai did not save the night. It moved the night indoors. Cool air now exists behind doors, behind glass, behind hotel lobbies, behind shopping malls. Outside, the day continues. Inside, darkness comes with a thermostat. This is the grand solution that sustains the tourism economy. The creation of a parallel climate. The heavy sliding doors of the mall open, and a blast of engineered winter escapes. They close, and the natural world is sealed away. The city that could not cool the night turned cool air into an indoor product. District cooling now supplies more than 20% of the cooling demand in Dubai. It is no longer a collection of individual air conditioners. It is a massive, heavy, invisible layer of urban infrastructure. But this poses a massive systemic risk to the tourism model. When the outdoors becomes hostile, the entire economic footprint of the city is compressed. Millions of annual visitors cannot wander. They are funneled exclusively into indoor retail and entertainment complexes. These spaces have capacity limits. When every tourist is driven indoors by the inescapable night heat, the malls become overcrowded. The experience degrades. The illusion of endless luxury turns into the reality of a crowded shopping center. Is this control over the climate, or surrender with automatic doors? The marketing brochures promise a boundless desert metropolis. The reality is a series of interconnected glass terrariums. You travel from an air-conditioned room to an air-conditioned car to an air-conditioned restaurant. The space in between is simply a void to be survived. But manufactured night comes with one condition. The machines must never stop. Night once reduced demand. Now the machines simply change shifts. The sun stops heating the building, but the building is still releasing heat. The air remains humid. The rooms must remain cool. So the compressors continue. The pumps continue. The cooling plants continue. Dubai is no longer waiting for a cooler night. It is powering one into existence. The sheer scale of this survival mechanism is buried in the data. According to official figures, the peak electricity demand in 2025 climbed nearly 6% in a single year, reaching roughly 11.39 gigawatts. Desalinated water demand rose even faster, increasing by over 6% to a record 161.5 billion imperial gallons. The peak daily water demand pushed toward 487 million gallons. The life support machine was not shrinking. It was becoming hungrier. What happens when cooling demand remains elevated through the night, then rises again when the sun returns? The traditional utility model relies on a trough, a period of low demand where systems can rest, cool down, and undergo maintenance. But the heat battery of the city, combined with the ceaseless demands of the tourism and hospitality sectors, is erasing that trough. A hot day charges the thermal battery. Nighttime cooling requires massive energy. The equipment continues under load. The maintenance window narrows. Dawn breaks. The sun hits the glass. The load spikes again. The danger is not that Dubai cannot survive one hot night. It is that the system may lose the cool interval between hot days. The cost of operating a hotel skyrockets when the chillers must run at 80% capacity at 3 in the morning just to fight off the trapped urban heat. This eats directly into the profit margins of the tourism sector, making the entire economic engine heavier and more expensive to drag forward. And the machines protecting Dubai from the heat are also sending heat back into the night. Every cooled room creates a warmer exterior. The heat does not disappear. It changes address. A bedroom cools. A balcony heats. A mall cools. A service corridor receives the exhaust. One side of Dubai experiences artificial night. The other side receives the waste heat. Air conditioning is a thermodynamic transaction. It pulls thermal energy from an enclosed space, consumes massive amounts of electricity to do so, and violently ejects both the original heat and the new mechanical heat into the streets. Urban climate studies elsewhere demonstrate the mechanism clearly. The anthropogenic waste heat from millions of cooling units directly raises the outdoor ambient temperature. This triggers a destructive feedback loop. The outside gets hotter. The buildings require more cooling to compensate. The machines work harder. They dump even more heat into the alleys and avenues. Dubai is fighting heat by throwing it outside and closing the door. How many cooled boxes can a city build before the space between those boxes becomes the furnace? Imagine the density of the marina or downtown. Hundreds of skyscrapers, thousands of retail units, tens of thousands of hotel rooms, all simultaneously vomiting thermal waste into the exact same pedestrian corridors that the tourism board advertises as vibrant evening walkways. The air literally shimmers above the pavement. The street-level experience for anyone attempting to walk outside is suffocating. The city is cannibalizing its own exterior to protect its interior. It is an engineering marvel that behaves like a parasite on its own environment. But waste heat is only half the trap. The other half arrives from the sea. The desert brings heat. The Gulf brings moisture. Dubai stands between them. One heats the city. The other can make it harder for the body to release that heat. And after sunset, the sea does not switch off. The United Arab Emirates' own climate projections outline a future of significant temperature increases, higher humidity, and prolonged hot and humid seasons. This is the ultimate geographical trap. When dry heat strikes, the body sweats. The sweat evaporates, and the skin cools. But when extreme heat mixes with the heavy, thick humidity rolling off the warm waters of the Gulf, that biological mechanism fails. The sweat remains on the skin. The body cannot vent its internal core temperature. Where does a coastal desert city go to cool down when the land is releasing heat and the air is holding moisture? There is no cool direction left. The desert is hot. The air is humid. The city is storing yesterday. And the machines are preparing for tomorrow. This specific combination is catastrophic for a tourism model that depends on expanding its season. Dubai wants visitors in May. It wants visitors in September. But the humid nights make these shoulder months physically dangerous for prolonged outdoor exposure. A tourist walking from a hotel to a nearby restaurant in high humidity experiences immediate physical distress. The perception of luxury evaporates the moment your clothes cling to your skin and your lungs pull in thick, wet heat. The environment is aggressively rejecting human presence. Now combine them, not as separate problems, as one night that never ends. The road does not cool. The wall does not cool. The room must cool. The machine keeps running. The worker does not fully recover. The equipment receives less relief. The city does not see a true reset. Then the sun returns. More heat, more cooling, more exhaust, less recovery. The cycle does not reset. It tightens. This is the operational stress scenario that defines the collapse of Dubai. It begins with a string of extremely hot days. The thermal mass of the concrete and asphalt reaches maximum saturation. Sunset arrives, but the temperature barely dips. The humidity rolls in from the water. The millions of tourists and residents are trapped inside. Every air conditioning unit in the city is screaming, pushing waste heat into the stagnant air. The power grid is pulling gigawatts of electricity just to hold the line. The desalination plants are burning vast amounts of energy to produce the chilled water needed for the district cooling networks. The maintenance windows for these critical infrastructure components vanish. A small mechanical failure in a cooling plant takes longer to fix because the backup systems are already running at maximum capacity. The hospitality workers, starting their morning shifts, have not slept properly. Their cognitive function dips, mistakes are made. The delivery logistics slow down. A system that slows down puts more pressure on the systems around it. Record airport traffic sounds like proof of unstoppable tourism. But airports count passengers. They do not count hotel nights or restaurant bills. Millions of those passengers are merely transiting through the massive air-conditioned terminals without ever stepping into the city. For the businesses actually located in Dubai, the reality is far more strained. Mid-tier hotels face a brutal mathematical reality. They cannot endlessly raise their prices because the global travel market is sensitive to inflation, but their utility bills surge to keep the trapped heat at bay. Revenue per available room comes under extreme pressure when the basic cost of keeping a guest comfortable consumes the profit margin. The tourism economy begins to suffocate under the cost of its own survival. Every new hotel built to attract more tourists simply adds to the thermal load requiring more electricity, which generates more waste heat, which makes the outdoors more hostile, which forces more tourists indoors, requiring even more air conditioning. Dubai is trapped in a loop of its own making. Dubai's greatest heat risk may not be the hottest afternoon. It may be the morning that begins before the previous day has ended. And that is how the night disappears. Not from the sky, from the operating system of the city. Dubai's collapse does not begin when a tower falls. It begins when the city loses the ability to reset, when sunset no longer ends the heat, when night no longer reduces the pressure, when sleep no longer fully restores the worker, when the machines enter tomorrow without leaving yesterday. Every morning begins with heat still trapped in the system. Every room demands cooling. Every cooling system sends heat somewhere else. Dubai once treated night as free relief. Now relief has to be generated, distributed, pumped, maintained, paid for. The tourism crisis is not about empty airports. It is about a destination that is becoming entirely too expensive and fragile to maintain. An economy built on endless growth cannot survive a physical environment that requires infinite energy just to remain at a baseline of survival. The visitors may still come, but they are stepping into a machine that is constantly on the verge of overheating. The sun still sets over Dubai, but that does not mean the day is over. The heat remains in the roads, in the walls, in the air, in the machines, and inside the exhausted bodies waiting for morning. Dubai has not lost the night in the sky. It has lost the night as an escape. And a desert city with nowhere left to cool is a city already beginning to collapse. The night is still there. It just no longer saves. Dubai. If you value documentaries that look beyond the skyline, subscribe. The next warning sign is rarely where the brochure tells you to look. This video is an analytical documentary based on public data, environmental studies, and official utility metrics available at the time of research. The analysis of infrastructure stress, heat island effects, and economic models is intended for educational purposes and does not constitute financial travel or investment advice. Conditions in global tourism and urban climates are subject to continuous change. This content examines systemic operational pressures and is not intended to target or diminish any residents, workers, or specific communities operating within the region.